Welcome to Creative Conversations with CYCJ, a podcast for discussing, debating and questioning justice with children and young people.
Cedric and Fiona, thank you for joining me today. The last time you were together to record an episode of Creative Conversations, you were at the National Youth Justice Conference last year where you were a speaker, Cedric, but you've caught up much more recently than that at the 5th World Congress on Justice with Children, which was in Madrid in June. And so I thought we could just maybe start by having a chat about the Congress, its aims, and both of your kind of highlights from the events that took place across the Congress.
Since I've been behind the full Congress, I'm happy to speak about it. The Congress by itself, this is a human adventure. It's basically effort of thousands of people from everywhere on Earth, focusing and interested in the future of children and children in contact with the justice system. But I would like to share perhaps three main highlights from the Congress for me. And the first one is the scope. It's madness to see that we were able to get more than 1,000 participants in Madrid in person, where we try to reduce the number, not to have such a big event, which is difficult to organize, and of course for the carbon footprint. So we made the Congress itself hybrid, and we had more than 6,000 participants online. And the best part, which I'm very proud of, is the fact that we managed to organize satellite event everywhere on Earth in 60 countries. So 60 satellite events and one in Scotland, yes. Of course. And satellite event means a lot because it's people dedicating time, their budget, their human resources, etc., to contribute to 1 week of child justice. No, so that's the first highlight. The second highlight, I think, it's the official support. We are in a topic which is not on the top of the agenda, right? Child justice, we're always behind, and we have to come back and say, think about the kids. And this World Congress were co-organized by the Spanish government, which is a second government in Europe with a childhood ministry. It was a strong message. But we had as well the participation of all international bodies, the UN, of course, and regional bodies, the European Commission, the Council of Europe, African Union, etc. That means that it was a long work to get that support, but it means a lot because we are sure this way that there is some consequences, positive consequences on their distinct agenda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for me, it was obviously Cedric was behind the scenes and organised it all. And for me, I was a participant. I delivered a workshop and was part of a panel. And it was just great. I think the atmosphere was brilliant. So it was great that there was the online and the satellite. But I think being in person was really good. The networking was great, making the connections. And seeing faces that we've met before and that are friends of us at CYCJ, that was really good. But I think delivering the workshop to showcase some of the work we're doing in Scotland and how we're really taking that child-centred justice approach here, which I think is really important to be able to showcase that because we are a small country. Mm-hmm. But what we're doing with children and young people is really important that others can learn from. And I think just being part of panels with people and listening to other speakers, there was a lot of young people presenting and co-facilitating and that was really good. And I think hearing the young people's story themselves is always more powerful because it's from their own experience, and I think that was just really good to hear them and just some of the other countries and some of the professional bodies who were speaking at the conference and hearing about their work. So it was really good to put it into context and reflect what could we do better. In Scotland, what can I bring back? What have I got responsibility to do here as director to really bring that back to Scotland, as well as, sharing the learning. So it's that two-way And then in our Youth Justice Conference, we did have a satellite event, and I think that went really well. And that was brilliant because we were able to share, because it was just the week after, because it was when our conference was in Scotland, and we were able to share some of the learning, some of the speeches. We sort of showcased some of the speeches, and then had some discussion in relation to that. So to really share that, and I think was really powerful in bringing that back. So it was a great conference. It was just so good to be there, and as you're saying, the buzz of the people, and afterwards, on social media and all the chat and the connections, it's been really great.
Yeah,
really, really
absolutely. Yeah, the satellite event, the videos that we showed to our delegates, they were so inspirational, weren't they? It was really brilliant to be able to show that to our audience in Scotland as well. And so, what are some of the emerging themes that have come out of the Congress that are kind of calls to action, or things that we should be thinking about for the future, that came out from some of the panels and some of the workshops across?
Yeah, I mean, the topic of the Congress is like an umbrella topic. No, it was how to advance child-centered justice, so a justice system which is putting back the child at the center of the decision and of the different programs, and above all, how to give the child the opportunity to to reintegrate. So a solution-oriented justice system, no, and the topic was linked as well to promotion of the child-centered justice approach to avoid violence against children affected in the context of justice. No, so there was very interesting topics around this umbrella topic, and there was few topics that are emerging topics, like for instance the over-criminalization of vulnerability. We see everywhere that children in migration, children with trauma, children with in poverty are over-criminalized, and there is certainly an interest to work better and have a better policy to protect those children. I think about, above all the neurodivergent children that are not recognized by the symptom, or they don't go through the screening, and they appear like they are not supportive, or they are not fitting, etc. So that was a big part of the topic. A second one, which I think is extremely interesting and like innovative, even if it's our daily life now, is the digitalization of justice, and where we have safeguard for children in contact with the justice system. Digital court, the use of artificial intelligence in sentencing, the biometric facial recognition by law enforcement. All of that seems to be like, Matrix, the movie approach, but now it's reality, and it's evolving very, very quicker than we understand. So that is a big issue. And the last one, which always seems to be far away from justice, is the effect of climate change on justice. Like, why climate change and justice? Why? But now it affects children with criminalization of protest, for instance, and peaceful assembly, or the effect of climate change with, for instance, the heat waves on detention center. We had so many testimonies from the States, from Texas, or from Asia, where inmates just die because it's too warm. So those are the topics. And above all, after that, the Congress is a good opportunity of sharing, sharing practices, restorative justice, child-friendly court, etc., and above all, innovation.
Yeah, and I think we were chatting about this earlier today. So I think a lot, like our Scottish policy, so we've got our child policy of GIRFEC, so getting it right for every child, really chimes with child-centred justice. And the parts of our youth justice policy of a whole system approach really chimes with child-centred justice. So we look at early intervention, we look at prevention, we look at diversion, and we look at reintegration. So there's so many great things that really chimed and that we're doing so well in. And then there is the issues and the rights breaches that I think were also highlighted. So the exploitation and the criminal exploitation of children, and many children not being recognised as victims of crime, and they are exploited. And we know they're from our most deprived areas in Scotland. We know the majority of children we deprive of their liberty are from our most deprived areas in Scotland. Poverty is the baseline for everything that we're talking about. So we know what we're getting right, and we know what we're doing really well, and we know areas I think that we need to improve on. And that's something in Scotland we need to sit and think about this and really look, because we're leading the way in so many areas. And I think another area you said there is AI, and I think we've had discussions about this just internally, that we're just not keeping up.
No.
You know,
It's impossible.
No. So personally at CYCJ Scotland, we're just not keeping up. And there's more children being exploited online as well that we're not keeping up with. And it's really us trying to get ahead of the game. And we know, I think, that we need to do that, and we need to improve and do that better. But it's how we do that, and how we even try and keep up, or keep some knowledge, or develop some knowledge maybe, so that we can be there for children and young people who are being exploited in that way. So that's something I think we are aware of that we need to get better at as well. And the Congress really highlighted that, and highlighted the issues affecting all the nations, I think, that were there. So we're not alone. So,
no, exactly.
Yeah, and we can learn from each other, because there are some that'll be further advanced. So it's just how we do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And all of those issues and themes that you were highlighting there, they all could be addressed by the kind of global declaration on advancing child-centred justice that kind of rounded off the Congress. So can you tell our listeners, Cedric, a little bit more about the sort of different aspects of that global declaration and what that's...
So the global declaration is important because it brings, it synthesizes a momentum, right? So a World Congress, basically, it's happening every 5 years, something like that. So it's like it gives you a snapshot, of the situation, right? And by doing a global declaration, we put all the main actors together on a specific topics that we want to focus on. That global declaration focuses on the concept of child-centered justice. It's coming from a global movement, as I say before, of people-centered justice, people-centered approach, where we put back the human being at the center, not of one system, but the systems with in a plural. From a child perspective, it's even more. Because children are human beings in development with specific vulnerabilities, so they need more than that. And they need basically to be protected, to be included, and to be empowered as well, or support to become empowered. So the global declaration brings those concepts. What are the barriers in access to justice, and why a more holistic approach is a solution to support children adequately.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've made some progress, I think you could argue, in Scotland. We've had the incorporation of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child for a year now. We've had aspects of the Children's Care and Justice Act have been implemented, and all under 18s have been removed from young offenders institutions. But you recently collaborated on an article for the Law Gazette that sort of argues that we could be going further in sort of three main ways. I will just reference them here. So coming back to what you were talking about earlier, Fiona, you argued that we could be doing more for prevention, enabling environments, and systemic reform. So could you explain a little bit more about what you were talking about within that article?
Yes, I think, in all three, they sort of interlink. And I think we're, as I say earlier, we're really good at doing some things in Scotland, and there's some things I think in our systems and our processes and the way they're set up that we're probably not fully compatible with the UNCRC if we really unpicked it and looked at it. We've got, things like pre-trial detention, so remand. We've got children on remand and deprived of their liberty. And I would argue a lot of that might not be as a last resort. Is it for the shortest time possible? We know there's been delays through COVID. We know we've got some children waiting years to appear at court, and that's just really not compatible. We know there's the processes in relation to seclusion, strip searching, pain-induced restraint, and that is changing in Scotland. But there are issues there, that we need to be looking at, that we could be changing. There's no reason why we can't. The prison, when the under-18s were there, stopped using pain-induced restraint. The Theresa Medhouse recently announced that they were planning to roll that out throughout the whole of the prison estate. But children are, things like being in police custody can be really traumatising for them, especially when they're there for days on end, all weekend before they potentially appear at court, and the whole strip search, and just the children have told us how traumatising that is. So there are areas that we could really be getting better in Scotland, and we are trying to do that. We are working. We've got working groups. We've got a lot of good people who are committed to doing that, and it's just how we do that. Because these systems and processes have been in place for many years, and they're just not fit for purpose for our children. So we need to make those changes. So I think that article was reflecting on that from a Scottish perspective. I think just some of the real improvements and changes that have been made, like the Children's Care and Justice Act, but just how we could go a step further and need to do that.
Yeah. When we organized the World Congress, we started 2 years before a European research on safety of children in detention, deprived of liberty. And we did that in several European countries, and we did a review of the 27 European countries. And that was extremely interesting because we were trying to figure out if there was any criteria to measure violence against children in detention. Impossible. Nothing. Because it's not a concept. The concept is about safety. The concept is about basically to protect, which is very important, the staff. But all kids or young people are leaving the violent environment. There is no measurement of that. And that is extremely important because without taking that into account, how can you foster their reintegration after into the society? If at the end you try to support the reintegration of the child, but you add trauma on top of other trauma, then you give more work to the society. So the article is a little bit like that, no? Prevention of harm and finding solutions to make sure that the system reintegrate the child, protect the child, rather than just think about punishment.
Yeah, and ultimately, as you're saying, that has less cost to everybody.
Yeah.
It's less traumatizing for children. It means they can reintegrate into society, and less cost for society, who end up with doubly traumatized children or adults, because it doesn't go away, and they become young adults, then become adults, and then they're perpetuating that cycle with having their own children, and they've not addressed their trauma and how to behave, and so it really then has the knock-on effect of costing everybody.
Absolutely. And practitioners and professionals from a whole range of different areas and areas of expertise, they can all influence in these three areas, can't they, in their own specific ways. So what would you have a call to action for people in those roles? How would they go about influencing change, even if it's in a really small way, to help further that ambition to
Yeah,
make?
well, I think definitely. I think we've all got a part to play in relation to that. I think we really need to go back to our whole system approach principles of prevention. We know it's evidence-based. We know it works.
Yeah.
So we really need to look at how we can prevent children coming into a justice system in the first place. And when they're in a justice system, we need to get them out as soon as possible. And we need to see them through the lens of having distressed behaviour and not labelling them as being bad, children that can't change. We need to see the distressed behaviour, and we need to, if we see it through that lens, we'll deal with it in a different way. And we need to be protecting children. We need to protect them in all these systems. Wherever they are, they need protection within them. And I think ultimately, if we do that and we all do our part in doing that, that would really help. It would reduce the children in the system, and it would give them the protection they deserve in the systems and help them reintegrate back into their own communities, where ultimately they will go.
Yeah. I think that first we need to remember that children are right holders. We are not trying to be nice with children. We're just trying to respect their right first.
Yeah.
And then if we respect their rights, then it's not just because they have rights, it's because it's good for the full society. We don't want to end up with a child spending his full life in prison. It costs a fortune. So why? What will be the objective? The objective is, I remember working with a German government saying to me, we need people working. We can't just keeping people in prison for nothing. They need to be in the community and work and contribute. And I think it's right. The children need to be supported to be able to be a citizen that will pay their tax, basically. In a very cold way of thinking it, no? But I think that for that, the main message is like we need the system fit the child and not the contrary. Yeah. And we've been thinking the system from an adult perspective, and that's why it's not working well. And that's why it's important sometimes to consider the possibility of including even children within the reflection around the change, the law reform, the systemic approach, etc. So I remember in the Biden administration, the Office of Juvenile Justice Prevention Department in the White House, they had one message was serve children at home. Very simple. But that should be our objective, no? Supporting the families, supporting the environment, supporting the community, and make sure that people are outside the system.
Yeah, and I think we've been really emphasising that, and it is really evidence-based, and through our Reimagining Secure Care, really looking at how we can keep children in their local communities, keep them at home, support them at home. It's about the team around the child and the family to really do that, and that's something that is just, it's so important. And we also do a lot of work taking account of the views of children and young people. It's why we're here. They're at the heart of what we do, and I think that is so important, because I think we think at times as adults we know best, or we know what they want, and I think children are really good at telling us when we've got it wrong. My own children are, but I think telling us what would work better, especially if you've been a child in the system. They're telling us what is wrong with it. They're telling us what's traumatising, and they're telling us how to improve it. And we need to listen, because they are the ones that have experienced that. Exactly. And I think if we listen, we will start getting it right for every child, as is our aim in Scotland.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Cedric, from an international perspective, I suppose no country has got this right. There's no one brilliant model that we should all be following.
Apart from Scotland.
Obviously.
Of course.
But are there, I suppose from your experience, have you seen where there's sort of facets of different countries' approaches that, you would like to highlight, or anybody that does have particular examples of good practice?
Cherry pick all the best.
Yeah, put them together.
I think we say the equivalent of medley in English. In French, we call it pot pourri. And then it doesn't seem to be a very positive word, but it means that a little bit of piece of everywhere would make the perfect system, right? And actually, what I think interesting is that there is a global movement toward similar objective. When you meet with professionals at the World Congress, you're amazed by the conversation you have at coffee break. And I remember one was a colleague from Italy and another colleague from Malaysia, and they discovered they had a similar approach, a similar restorative justice and through diversionary measures approach in their different countries, different culture, different religion, different political context, different environment, etc. But the practice was very similar. So that is, for me, the great message that at least there is a global movement, and that is the spirit of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, right? All those international mechanisms help us to go somewhere. So I will say we're all in a growing process, but we need to keep going. So there is a lot of very interesting practice everywhere. I think in Scotland, the whole system approach is something extremely interesting, and I will be extremely interested in. I feel that it will be super valuable to check in other country similar approach and get inspired, as well from that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And Fiona, how important is it for us as a centre sort of representing Scotland's different practices and the whole systems approach, as you mentioned? How important is it for us to be in these international conversations as a centre?
Yeah, I mean, it's so important, and I think it's so important for the networking and just to hear what other countries are doing and learn from other countries, as well as being able to share, what we're doing. I think it's so inspirational when you're there and you're actually, speaking to it's academics, practitioners, the legal representatives, policymakers, and the children and young people themselves about what's happening in their country and what they are doing to address that. And I think there's so many people that are just so inspiring and really committed and are going that extra mile, and I think that's what we see a lot. So the people, they're really pushing boundaries to make a difference, and they're not just accepting of what's happening because that's the way it's done. And for me, I think that is just so important. So you've got people that are just really brave, and they're willing to stand up to make sure that children's rights are endorsed, are heard, are seen as just as important as the rights of adults, and not lesser as could be the case.
Yeah. If I can add on that, I think that the people is what really matters. And I think our policymakers, they should understand something very simple, that every professional in contact with a child, they spend their day, every day, finding solutions, small solutions. In spite of budget cut, in spite of pressure, in spite of tiredness, they do their best to find small solutions to individual cases. And I think it's what we need to remember. This is not a cold system. It's made of people. And our people working in our field, they're motivated, they're passionate by what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've kind of come to the end of my questions that I nosily wanted to ask. So I wondered if we could round off with a little bit of a prediction as we head into the winter, thinking about what might be in store for advancing child-centred justice and children's rights in 2026. So yeah, it might be like crystal ball gazing, but just what are your thoughts?
Easy question, Cedric.
Yeah. Okay, I can start because it seems the world seems to be so positive at the moment, so I can bring the global context. Listen, I will say that I will not lie if I say I'm worried. I'm definitively worried. No, we see everywhere a difficult situation with definitively the budget cuts everywhere. starting with USAID, to be very transparent, got consequences that are unimaginable on international bodies, UNICEF, and the Office on Drug and Crime, UNODC, the High Commissioner on Human Rights. They're all suffering of budget cuts. So it brings me a real question about what will be the multilateralism. Oh, this word is very difficult for me. Sorry, but you understood now. In 26 and after, what does it mean in terms of international cooperation, connection, etc.? And I think my positive touch there is that I feel we can believe in the people. And we can believe in between the professional. We have now the tools to communicate much easier, in a much more easier way. So we can continue to exchange practices, to exchange information, to all of that is to create a kind of alliance of people, right? Because we need to fight back the difficult context, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and I think we're no exception there in Scotland with the what's happened financially, and the pressure is very real for most of us. And I think, again, for us in Scotland and CYCJ, we really want to just keep that passion, try and keep the optimism. We are looking at embedding our Reimagine Secure. We want to take a preventative approach to our antisocial behaviour. We really want to make sure our whole system approach is really advanced for our children and our young people up to age 21. We've got the commencement of the Children's Care and Justice Act. We've got other new pieces of legislation going through Parliament at the moment. And they're all for the benefit of children and young people. So I think that is it's really important, and it's important that we keep that momentum, because it is going to be difficult over the next wee while, hopefully not too long, but it is going to be difficult. And I think it's keeping that passion and momentum will be so important going forward to make sure we're upholding children's rights and that child-centred justice approach.
Yeah. Brilliant. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Creative Conversations. It was absolutely fascinating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.